Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
So good to be here tonight. It is so cold and rainy outside lately, at least where I live. It is nice that the weather has improved a bit, but nevertheless, to be inside on Shabbat is something that not all of our ancestors had, but we have it. So it is a luxury that I don't want us to take for granted. This week's Torah portion, Vayechi, is about the death of Jacob and the expectations he sets for his children while he's on his deathbed. There's a lot about the parent-child relationship that can be learned from this week's parasha. Parents, we love them, right? We're commanded to, and with good reason. Our parents raise us and sustain us, and they bring out the best in us. And whenever we are successful, that success can be traced back to them and how they set us up for that success. At least, that's the theory. In real life, it can be a lot messier. Yet, we are still commanded to love. We're commanded to love our parents. But we all know love can be messy. Our feelings for our parents change many times over the course of our lives. Although each person has a different relationship with their parents, and this model might not be true for everybody, I want to propose 3 main stages in our lives when our feelings for our parents may change. The first stage is our impression of our parents when we're children. First impressions can be very hard to shake off. What we experience as kids is often what lasts, but not always. Stage 2 is our impression of our parents when we become adults. We have seen what it's like by this point to be an adult in the real world. We have to make tough choices just like our parents did. We might even have children of our own. At that point, we can really evaluate our parents' choices against our own and see where we might have differed. We might decide that although we had a happy childhood, we no longer agree with some of the choices our parents made. Or conversely, we might have hated some of the decisions that our parents made while we were kids, but now that we've grown up, we might be able to better understand where they were coming from and realize there was a lot more to it than it seemed when we were children. For many people, our admiration for our parents either increases or decreases when we become adults. Although for some people, the level of admiration remains the same. Although, to be clear, admiration is not the same as love. Obsession is not the same as love. Although I know many high school kids who would disagree. Now, the third stage, of course, is when our parents pass away. And at that point, again, our feelings for them can change. What is a legacy? How do we want to remember them? How do our parents want to be remembered? And that brings us back to our parsha, because on his deathbed, Jacob gathers his 12 sons and says to them, "Come together so I may tell you what is to befall you in days to come." Jacob then goes on to tell each of his sons what's going to happen to them in the future. Just like the predictions of today's fortune tellers, Jacob's comments to his sons are a little cryptic, and they can't easily be understood without context. Context that the brothers don't have. However, for the most part, Jacob's prophecies were exceedingly positive or exceedingly negative. 3 of the brothers got cursed, and 9 of them got blessed. Even among those who were blessed, some of those blessings were better than others. And the 3 brothers who got cursed, Reuben, Simeon, and Levi, these were Jacob's last words to them, these curses. The last words your parents tell you before they die can be extremely impactful in some cases. If the words aren't what you want to hear, you may resent your parent for the rest of your life. And in some cases, this can be really, really terrible. On the other hand, we might consider that our parents might not be themselves at that moment. They might be affected by things like Alzheimer's or other diseases that are not true of them or how they were for the majority of their life. In Jacob's case, though, he made it clear from the start that he loved Joseph more than the others. And when his sons heard these negative words, it's not like these words were coming out of nowhere. For Simeon, Levi, Reuben, these words were devastating. Not only were they were cursed in front of all their brothers who were blessed. How humiliating. After Jacob's death, they had a choice: to let their father's words define them, or to carry on with life and prove them wrong. The Torah doesn't say which occurred, because the book of Genesis then ends, and we don't pick up in the book of Exodus until several generations later. Needless to say, though, expectations can have a big effect on our lives, and I want to tell a short story of a very unprofessional teacher and his 3 students. One day, a 5th grade teacher conducted an intelligence test, an assessment for his students in his class. When he graded the tests, he noticed that most students performed at grade level expectations, but there were 3 scores that stood out. 1 score was exceedingly high, and 2 scores were exceedingly low. The next day, he called those 3 students into his office all at the same time, and he said to the first student, "Your score was excellent. You are far superior academically to everybody else in the class. I expect great things from you when you grow up." To the other 2 students, he said, "Your scores were terrible. You should be ashamed. You will never amount to anything. And you should temper your expectations about any success you might wish for yourself later in life." When the students left the office, the 2 who scored poorly were understandably upset. Their teacher didn't live to see them grow up. After the kids graduated from 5th grade, they went to a new school, and they never saw this teacher again. 40 years later, these kids were grown up. The overachiever was doing all right for himself. He wasn't necessarily struggling, but he hadn't achieved any of the expectations that were foretold for him by his teacher. He was capable, he was talented, but he had gotten lazy and complacent. He had seen others surpass him, and rather than be happy for their success, or to use their success as motivation for him to work harder, he made the decision that if he wasn't going to be acknowledged for his talents, then he should stop working hard. To him, there was no benefit to being talented if his talents were not going to be acknowledged. Then there were the 2 kids who scored low as children. They could not have turned out more differently from each other. The first of these 2 children ended up inheriting a life exactly as miserable and unsuccessful as his teacher predicted. He said to himself, "It's not my fault. My teacher was right about me all along. This was predetermined. I never had a chance, so why on earth should I have wasted my time trying to reach goals that were never a possibility for me anyway?" But he was wrong. The truth was, his abilities had blossomed quite a bit since school. He had all the potential to be super successful and happy. But because he accepted his teacher's words as the indisputable truth and let those words define his life, the words became a self-fulfilling prophecy. But then there was the 3rd child, the other child with the low test score. Yes, her teacher's words insulted her. But that never caused her to give up. In fact, she became extra motivated to prove her teacher wrong, to break through the glass ceiling and achieve what she was told she had no chance of accomplishing. This child, whom the teacher condemned, ended up becoming the most successful of all the 3 children. While we can all have our own opinion about the Torah portion, I believe the words that Jacob said on his deathbed to his children were highly wrong. Barvanel says that he agrees that Jacob decided to pass leadership onto the son that he thought was most qualified. He evaluated the strengths and weaknesses of each child to his own knowledge, and then shared all of his evaluations with his children, with his students, all at once in the same room. But Jacob didn't really know the truth about all of his sons. He only judged them based on what he knew about them. There were plenty of great moments for these children where Jacob wasn't around to watch. And I imagine there were plenty of great moments for these children they would go on to do long after Jacob had gone. But if Jacob didn't know about it, how could he take it into his evaluation? We need to be very careful when we evaluate, if we choose to evaluate at all. Love for our parents can be a powerful thing. We are often raised to adore them, and we should want them to love us back. We are commanded to love our parents, and we should. But sometimes certain parents can make that obligation very hard for us, particularly if they raise us to fear them or to resent them. Let's compare that obligation to love our parents with another obligation of love. We are commanded to love God. Our relationship with God, and also with our parents, works best if it relies on love and not fear or resentment. Rashi explains this, and the following words are his commentary on the commandment in Deuteronomy 6 concerning loving God. "And you shall love God perform God's commandments out of love. The one who performs the commandments out of love cannot be compared to the one who performs the commandments out of fear. If one serves their master out of fear, when the master sets a great burden upon them, they will run away. So yes, we should love our parents. It is both a commandment and a wonderful thing to do. But not all the commandments are easy to follow. Parents can make it easier on their children to follow this commandment by showing their children that they truly care. Jacob didn't follow this blueprint, and if his final words were anything to go by, he made it very hard on his children to follow that commandment. Like all words in the Torah, we have this story not because it is perfect, but because we can learn from it. Let's all be the best that we can be. As parents, let us show love, and as individuals, let us not allow other people's expectations of us to weigh us down, even if they're negative and devastating, like his words to Reuben, Simeon, and Levi. Love yourself. Be the best that you can be, no matter what somebody else might say about you. I want to close with one of my favorite quotes from any Jewish text. It comes from Psalm 118, part of Hallel. Even ma'asu habonim hayta lerosh pina. The stone that the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. No matter what anyone says about us, we can still do it. We just have to convince ourselves that we can do it.